Good Tuesday morning to you. It's 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in Ohio, and we're glad that you're able to join us today. Whether you're watching live or the recording, what we are showing on the screen right now is whatever is on everybody's mind, or most everybody across the world, and that is the war in Ukraine that has been brought on by the Russians. This is the New York Times front page. This is the LA Times. This is the Wall Street Journal. This is the USA Today and the Washington Times. So it's on our minds. It is something that and it is something that will affect all of us, which we're used to because we're used to being affected by something that is global. Hi, Kim.
Good morning.
So I was just setting the stage for our conversation today. And we're going to be talking to Jonas pretty soon from Brazil, talking about how
Absolutely.
is impacting the coffee supply chain, or the chain, the normal chain of coffee from farmers to cup, and how the war is affecting them. But I thought while we're waiting on him to join, we might talk about some of the economic impact of the war. And I also wanted to show this. The International Monetary Fund Executive Board met 4 days ago, and they talked about some of the economic impact of the war. And I just did a little bit of highlighting here. Of course, the first to talk about is the tragic loss of life and human suffering, and the more than 1 million refugees that are now having to deal with the fallout of the war. In addition, there's energy and commodity pricing that is being impacted, especially wheat and other grains have surged, which is adding to the inflationary pressures from supply chain disruptions and the rebound from COVID.
Right.
And of course, those poor households, those in poor households are facing a pricing shock that needs to be addressed. They go on to say that the pass-through of rising international prices to domestic inflation is a real concern. And in Ukraine, of course, the seaports and airports are closed and have been damaged, and have many roads and bridges have been damaged or destroyed, which is going to result in significant recovery and reconstruction costs for them. And then countries that have very close economic links to Ukraine and Russia are at particular risk of scarcity and supply disruptions, which is kind of like what we're going to be talking to Jonas about. And he was coming back from work and was going to join us as soon as he could. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's the deal. That's what we're facing today. As if the pandemic wasn't big enough for us to deal with. Uh,
No, I know.
it's amazing. So, but shout out to Ken Kenkiyut, Kenkiyut, for the first to join us. I'm going to look you up, and we'll show up your Instagram page. But Kim, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. I'm taking a little break. Actually, so last week I was in Virginia. You may have remembered I was in Stanton, Virginia.
Yep.
And this week we made our way down to Florida. So I'm in rainy Florida at the moment. But yeah, so getting a little bit of warmer air. You know,
Yeah, you've got your coffee hat on. That's good.
I got my coffee hat on. I got my beach gear on, my beach hat on today.
Are you?
It's a little rainy.
Oh no, you're in
Go
a
ahead.
car. Are you in
I'm
a?
in the car. Yeah, I'm in the car.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went out and got some coffee, and and I got caught in the rain. So I was gonna be outside today, and then we just had a little bit of a downpour. So I wanted to come to you from the beach today.
Oh,
But
that's too
it
bad.
didn't work out so well when it was like torrentially raining. So
That is too bad.
Yeah. So anyway, so it's
Well,
like a
this
little
is our
change of scenery.
this is our first one to join us today, and KF, thank you for being the first one to join us live today. I want to give you a little bit of shout out here. Um, Kankayut, and make sure we do that. I've invited Jonas to join us here soon, and as soon as he can, he will join us. But are you seeing any economic impact where you live? Have you have you noticed anything?
Yeah, I haven't noticed anything yet. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I think in terms of just right now, I think all of our local communities, our local, all our local small businesses are working so hard to give back to the Ukrainian community. We have people within, who live in our towns and work in our small businesses who have family and relatives that are directly impacted, right, who are working to keep themselves and their families safe in Ukraine and leave the country. So I've been seeing a lot of like local community support um, to help to help those in need that have been again severely affected um, by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I think so. Just in terms of that's the biggest impact that I've seen in the local communities right now. I feel that I mean, I think a lot of the people here, when we talk to coffee shop owners, they're so big on the community and the community aspect. I think that's what you're seeing right now. Um, so there's a lot of outreach going around, but not so much yet. I don't think the trickle down has hit us in terms of what you were saying when you were quoting the letter from the International Monetary Fund. Those energy prices haven't yet hit us, right? They may hit you with the gas pump right now, like yeah, totally. As I drive back home from Florida, I'm going to pay higher gas prices.
Yeah, right.
But like in the grand scheme of things, for me, I don't necessarily do a lot of traveling, so it'll affect this trip. Um, but I think it's going to, but we'll start to see is, say for our coffee shop owners, their utility bills will, I would say 30, 60 days from now, we'll start to see the impact of these increased prices as right now the goods that we have in our stores were purchased, a week ago,
Mhm.
30 days ago, we paid our utility bills, energy prices were creeping up, but they weren't at the levels they
Right.
are today. Um, but yeah, and I know there's like the community in the northeast of the U.S. has been hit pretty hard. It's been an interesting to look at where the northeast gets their energy, and the northeast, so like Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, they get a lot of their oil and gas and liquid natural gas from outside the United States, as you may not know, which I learned this week. So yeah, so in terms of if you're in the Northeast, you probably are seeing much higher pricing on utilities and gas at the pump than we are in the, say, New Jersey, Mid-Atlantic states. So it's it's an interesting time, and I think the next 30 days, it's like everybody just hold on to your hat, buckle down,
Yeah.
and just I would say the continued community support that we all have done anyway, right? Because it's just part of our DNA, is what's going to get us through, to be there for one another going forward.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of the impact of our mindset on situations like this. Um, there's pretty much three things that we can always control, and it's the acronym ARM. So we can arm ourselves with what we can control. ARM standing for our actions, our reactions, and our mindset.
Right.
And it's if you don't have a healthy mindset, it's almost like you don't have your health. I mean, it's not exactly that, but when you think about it, what does a sick person focus on? They focus on one thing: to get better.
Mm-hmm.
a healthy person focus on? Well, a bunch of things. We can focus on all kinds of things when we're healthy, but when we're not healthy, we focus on one thing, and that is get healthy. And I think the same thing is true with the mindset. If you don't have a good mindset, then you are greatly restricting how you can handle situations like this. And so what do? How do you create the kind of mindset that you need as a business owner to weather the storm of this interconnected world community, especially the coffee industry? You know,
Right.
we are greatly impacted by supply chain, and as soon as Jonas joins us, we will what the what this war is doing to um, the economics in Brazil. But it's when you can have a mindset of hopefulness and strength, and you can lean into community for propping one another up. I think you're blessed if you have that kind of community. And I think, you and I have been talking about creating a community of coffee shop and craft brewery owners and roasters. That this is the very thing that we can help create, is a community of people who can build one another up.
Yeah, absolutely. And be there to support one another during these challenging times, right? Like, I mean, I would say like even the people that I know with the strongest mindset right now are having trouble sleeping and having, being more distracted by the news events than normal. And I think, that's a testament just to being a human being, right? That,
Right.
we're so caring. And so I would just say we all need to be a little kind with ourselves in terms of like how we might be a little bit um, out of our comfort zone right now, because there's so much else going on in the world that we haven't experienced in a long time.
Mhm.
um and so yeah, I think it just in terms of, yeah, like what can you control? You can control your actions, your reactions, and your mindset, and just, work through what's happening and reach out to your communities. Have community events, join us on forums like this to discuss um what's happening, and um and how, how to, stay strong and continue to run a profitable business, right? Because at the end of the day, you are, we talk about focusing on our business owners, and
Mhm.
we have business owners and we have responsibilities to the employees who work in our coffee shops and our craft breweries. And we want to keep our communities thriving, right? So it's just like, okay, how can we just keep that business going? And yeah, so it's just, sometimes it's, maybe it's reaching out to other business owners who may be experiencing the same challenges. um and then just showing up every day and being really strong, and empathetic. I think too there's a bit of empathy that needs to go on, that we need to realize um that everyone experiences events like this in a different way.
Right.
um
Yeah.
so it's, being empathetic to how, you know different people will react differently to the current situation. um but it just in terms of, and then everybody's going to be ultimately affected differently, from financially differently, right? So it's like, we talk about um coffee shops or businesses that are financially stable. So if you are financially stable, and I know a lot of the businesses that I've been speaking to have been building up inventory. So like buying a little bit more coffee beans for their coffee shop, because they
Right.
know, like, over the past, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, we've been in this environment where coffee bean prices have been increasing, right? We have already seen an increase in supply costs. Um, and so coffee shop owners have been purchasing a little bit more, right? So having a little bit more inventory on hand, to make sure that they can continue to service their clients, and their guests who walk into the shop. And so those companies are doing a little bit, maybe a little bit more financially stable than someone who's like buying every day or every week, because though right now we're having this high inflationary environment. So I think, like, again, this just is a testament to working hard to be financially stable, to having some cash reserves on hand, and to being in a position where you can take action, take meaningful reaction, and keep in a good mindset, as you're saying, like
Yeah.
living out your arm philosophy.
Well, Coco Betu, welcome, and glad you're watching from United Arab Emirates. In fact, here is your Instagram page. Thank you for joining us today. Um, all
And
right.
Scott, I think Jonas is here now.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
To invite him to us, to join us. Hang on. Hang on. Here he is. Let's see if he can join us real quickly. Thank you all for joining. If you're just now connecting with us and you wonder what in the world are we talking about, well, we're talking about the impact of the war on the world. There's Jonas now, and we're going to talk about how the war is affecting the coffee chain in Brazil. Jonas, I want to introduce you to Kim. Kim.
Hello.
Hello.
And Kim, this is Jonas. He is it looks like you're at a coffee farm, right?
Today I'm in a park.
Oh, okay.
Like I told you, I have to go to another city,
Yes.
but I got some traffic jam, so I decided to stop in the city, go in a nice park, and do the live here.
Good, good. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you could join us. So, Jonas, tell us a little bit about the impact that you're seeing from your perspective as a ergonomist in the coffee world in Brazil, and what's the war doing to that?
Yeah, recently we already in Brazil are facing a lot of crises, like worldwide too, like inflation and problems with labor. And in the coffee chain, we have the problem of the coffee shortage that everyone are talking about. If Brazil will have enough coffee to supply the world and the domestic consumption of coffee. So beyond that, now we have the terrible conflict, the war in Ukraine, and the problem is it's most of the fertilizer that Brazil use for crops, including coffee. About 85% of the fertilizer that we use in Brazil are imported for some countries. And Russia and Belarus is responsible for 26% of all the fertilizer that Brazil imports. So this is a huge problem, not just for coffee, but for crops like corn, sugarcane, cotton, beans, wheat, everything, because fertilizer is very important to keep the crops with very good yields.
Mm-hmm.
So farmers are very depending for that to make profit, because if you are expecting to harvest, let me say, 20 bags of coffee, and then you can't put fertilizer and harvest 10, you're gonna have some problems to pay your bills, because the only source of income is what I grow in my field. So for now, we in the coffee area, we still have a quite a comfortable situation, because all the fertilizations for the agronomic year already done.
Okay.
So
Yep.
we're gonna start again in September for the next season, because the coffee, we start to talk about the next season in September. It's when the flowers happen in Brazil, the beans start to grow a little bit, so we start in September. But now what I saw is some farmers that I work, which are very small, they just buy the last lots of fertilizers in the last 10 days. And they already went to the storage, and they are not finding more fertilizer stored. Once, because you remember when the pandemic started and people start to buy toilet paper a lot. But now it's fertilizer, because farmers are worried if they will have fertilizer in September. So people went to the stores, the farmers, and buy almost all the fertilizer which was available. So now there's not so many fertilizer available, and the prices already start to rise. Even we already have inflation of fertilizer in Brazil in about 150% compared to last year. So we have inflation over inflation. So for coffee, like I told you, we have some few months to see what we could do, if we could use some organic, like manure, like poop from animals, which is a possibility. But there are some crops that they will plant in July, like wheat, for example, in Brazil, in the south. They start to grow in the winter, kind of winter time for the south in Brazil. So these farmers are very worried if they will have fertilizer for that or not.
I think it's ironic. You use the pandemic situation, and we rushed to get all the toilet paper, and now rushing to get fertilizer. It's fascinating. How we're talking about mindset. It's just really good to have a healthy perspective of everything, but the irony is just crazy. So what I noticed, your growing season is like the opposite of where it is here. Like right now we are beginning the spring process, and planting, and the gardens are going to start getting planted and seeded in the spring. You're looking at the fall for the flowers to begin to come up, and then you harvest. When is the harvest time for you guys?
Usually it varies a little bit between regions, but usually in May it's where most of the areas start to harvest some coffee, and lasts until August, September in some cold areas in Brazil, or in some high altitude areas. But it's between May to September, which is good for coffee, because in Brazil the winter is more dry than cold. And for drying coffee, it's good that we do not have rains in the harvest season. And in Brazil, the areas that we grow coffee usually do not rain in this between the wet season, the dry season, and the rain season. And then it's when the coffee the coffee tree in this time, they kind of hibernate. Let me say that, because the temperature start to dropping, and the day start to be a little bit shorter, and we have no rain. So that's why we do not put fertilizer in the season. It's more because there are no conditions to the tree to use that fertilizer. So it's that perfect between to do the harvest and all the practice to dry the coffee and storage.
Well, so let's hope that things get back to some sort of normal before you need the big influx of fertilizer. Need it next, right?
Yeah, this is really worrying me. The government are trying to find new sources of, like new other countries to source fertilizer, but it's what happens is the same like toilet paper. Everyone wants now to find another places to buy fertilizers, because Russia is important to source this raw material for many countries, not just Brazil. So For example, one of the nutrients that is very important for coffee is pot, pot, potassium. I forget
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah. Potassium.
potassium, right?
Yeah.
The potassium and the main countries that mining, because the nutrients are mined like gold. It's a rock that they process it and make a kind of soluble fertilizer that you could use in the crops or in your garden.
Right.
And so it's Russia and Canada. They is the biggest countries that have mines of potassium. So Brazil are trying to deal with Canada to amplify the exportation from Brazil for
Mm.
many crops, because when we talk about fertilizer, the impact is in all the chain, because animals like chicken and porks, they eat corn, so as a cattle, as many other animals. So if we don't have fertilizer, we don't have enough corn, for example, so the prices over the meat will be rising too.
Mm-hmm.
And all the food that they are related to the chain, so rice and any kind of food or something which is related, which is bad, because food is the basis for any nation. So, and Brazil is an important producer of many crops that export worldwide. So the impacts could be reflected in many countries, not just in Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jonas, I want to point out that it's interesting when we have a disruption, which leads to the scarcity and concern. But what's also happening is innovation. That's
Mm-hmm.
the first phase is an enormous disruption happening.
Mm-hmm.
There is innovation because we are constrained to find a solution. And usually on the other side of innovation is a better situation than we were before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we are now increasing, for example, with the pandemic, we're increasing in our immunity. We are increasing in our awareness of what we learned in our younger ages, to wash our hands, to not
Mm-hmm.
touch things that are normal, that we learned as, here I am touching my face. But we learn these things, but sometimes a disruption forces us to think of different ways to do things. And then that different way of doing things makes things better. And I,
Mm-hmm.
in the spirit of of humanity and our ability to be innovative when we are being constrained. And Kim, that's what we were talking about, how important mindset is to whatever you're facing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
perfect.
you talk about, so like, it's just interesting because you're talking about innovation. And so Jonas, I was be curious to see, like, okay, so we're going to have innovation, but will it happen fast enough for the September, fertilization, or even like the July fertilization? So it's like we're going to have innovation, but yeah, as we saw in the pandemic, we had, it was 12 months before we came out with the vaccine. Like, innovation sometimes it takes a little bit of
Mhm.
time to work through the system. So I just hope for everyone that's out there, it's like we're going to experience, a disruption right now for maybe the next 6 months. And we just really need our businesses, our farmers, our coffee shops, our coffee growers to get to survive and get through this.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see. I think when we look back on the pandemic, we had a lot of programs and a lot of funding that helped us all get through the pandemic during those periods of time where we couldn't serve our clients, right? So maybe this is a situation where, we need to have more support for our farmers, for our cattle growers, for our coffee bean farmers, right? So that we can get the yield that we need. Yeah, because my concern now is, because Jonas, you alluded, like, yields could be 50, could be half of what they were if we can't get all the right fertilizer. Well, if that happens, pricing is either the inflationary environment is just going to keep getting pushed further out. And I think,
Right.
when we look at inflation, we were hoping to get through this inflationary environment by 2023. And now I'm like, oh no, is that going to be possible? Right.
Right.
If we really need our yield, we need our supply chain back as quickly as possible.
That's right. That's
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting. For me, it's like that. When we have a situation that we do not know exactly how to deal, I always think about this. For me, three solution is innovation. What a different way to do that in a way that nobody think before, and different perspective for the same problem. So look for in another direction that we are ignoring just because we already have a way to do it. So you don't care what is in your side. And sometimes like old school technology, like use
Mm-hmm.
poop or manure. It's just the things that our people before us do because we don't have fertilizer like we have before. So it's a technology that we are not using anymore because before that we don't need it. But it's good sometimes to go back a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
understand how people do things without the technology that we have now. So for me, there's three ways to understand the problem and maybe find a path, a solution for that.
That's
that's
fantastic.
that's great. Jonas, thank you for taking your time out and getting into a park where you could join us. Kim, good to see you again. Take care. Have fun in Florida, and
Absolutely.
we'll hold the fort up here in Ohio.
Perfect. It sounds good. All right, everybody stay safe.
Yep. And I want to remind our coffee shop and craft brewery owners and roasters to go to coffeeprops.com and click on owners and roasters, and then submit to us a very simple survey. Let us know what your biggest challenge is, and subscribe, because we're trying to uh, resource you the best we can. And thank you again for watching.
Great to
We'll
be
see you
here,
guys.
guys. All right. See you later. Bye.
Bye bye.